it's Priscilla. I am back, and today we will be covering Chapter 6 of Women Who Run with the Wolves. This chapter is called Finding One's Pack, Belonging as Blessing. I know I've said this before about loving chapters, but I love this chapter because for me, life was challenging. And it wasn't until I started to think about creating the family that I wanted, that was when I feel like I came into my own. You know, when you think about if the sisters that you have that you were born with, for some reason you guys can't get along and you can't seem to find just a way to be the way that you think you should be, then there are people out in the world who you can become friends with who feel just like a sister. You know, the same with mother, grandmother. My grandparents died, and so there were other people who kind of stood in as grandparents. So let's jump into this chapter, The Ugly Duckling. And so this chapter is considered the last neglected child. That's pretty deep, right? And I guess someone who just, you don't feel like you belong, as I said earlier. So one of the quotes that stood out to me is in my book, page 166. It says, spend less time on what they didn't give you and more time on finding people you belong to. So don't spend so much time trying to make the family you belong to or you were born from give you the things that you want to be given. You know, look for the people who naturally give you what you need, who want to give you what you need, who aren't trying to make you feel guilty for that particular want or need. So on to the next page, I have 169. It says, there are people whose presence both feel and excite you. Who I remember I used to have a close friend, and whenever I was around her, I started to feel healed. Through that friendship, I was opening up to her. She seemed as if she was opening up to me, and it felt like home. You know, the people who I've kept in my life for many, many years, those friendships felt like what I wanted home to be: safe, nurturing, caring, loving. So now I'm on 169, and what I've highlighted: they cried down to him, and hearing their sounds made his heart leap and break at the same time. He cried back in a sound he had never before made. He had never seen creatures more beautiful. Okay, I messed up. The Ugly Duckling, here was a duck who ended up with here was a swan who ended up with ducks, and all these ducks just thought the swan was ugly, hideous, awkward, strange, and they made fun of it. They treated it badly. They mocked it. Everybody around. The mother took care of it, but even got to a point where she was tired of the fact that it stood out so awkward, so gangly, so strange, so unnatural. I think, like, when I think of this story, you know, if you're born in a family and for some reason you just don't feel like you fit in, you know, or there's that person who just seems like the oddball, that's what this story represents, you know. And you know, within this story, first the mama duck was tending to it. When people would put it down, she stood up for it. She still took care of it, nurtured it. Then they came to a point where she didn't understand the difference, the fact that it stood out so much, the fact that it and I'm saying it, the fact that it didn't look like the other children, and then she herself rejected it. And so the duck, feeling that, went ahead and left. So I'm starting on 166. It says, let women who have experienced this take heart. You have avenged yourself by having been, through no fault of your own, a handful to raise and an external thorn to their sides. And perhaps even today you are able to inspire them to abject fear when you come knocking. That's not too shabby as innocent retribution goes. See to it not that you spend less time on what they didn't give you and more time on finding the people you belong to. So, you may not belong to your original family at all. You may match your family genetically, but temperamentally, you may belong to another group of people. I love that. It stands out. It speaks to our need. Just don't get so overwhelmed or so caught up with trying to change people, or even with waiting for people to change for you. Just realize that if your needs are not being met, someone out there, there's a group of people or someone out there who is willing to meet your needs. Go find your like-minded people. Go find, where you belong. All right, on to 169. It says, he, speaking of the duckling that was rejected, that stood out as different, he came upon a pond, and as he swam there, it became colder and colder. A flock of creatures flew overhead, the most beautiful he had ever seen. They cried down to him, and hearing their sounds made his heart leap and break at the same time. He cried back in a sound he had never before made. He had never seen creatures more beautiful, and he had never felt more bereft. He turned and turned in the water to watch them till they flew out of sight. Then he drove to the bottom of the lake and huddled there, trembling. He was beside himself, for he felt a desperate love for those great white birds, a love he could not understand. What comes to mind for me for this particular passage is when you come upon people who, as I say, get under your skin, but in a good way. I mean, they're just like there are people who can get under your skin and provoke you to a level of rage where you feel like you're seeing red. There are those people who can get under your skin and just make you feel like you're floating in air. These people who, as soon as you see, you remember what love is. You remember why the world is so awesome, why you even want to wake up every morning, So that's what comes to mind for me. It was at that moment he saw what he was looking for. So that's a beautiful passage. 170. Fear is binding. Break the tie. Take a risk for happiness. Wandering is not happiness. So obviously being confused, uncertain. I no longer feel committed to doing things that don't uplift or strengthen me. So I cannot be talked into going to a gathering where I know there are going to be people there who are going to be salty to me, rude to me, try to tear me down. I'm not drawn to that. There was a time where people would say things like, this is your family, you have to be around them. No, I don't. Why would I continuously subject myself to abuse? That's insanity. That's completely ludicrous. Yes, you're going to have disagreements, but your spirit can tell if you're around people who seek understanding, like they seek to understand why you feel the way you feel. They seek to want to resolve it. Just as your spirit can tell when someone is not being sincere, when you're around a person who wants to play both victim and bully. There is nothing cool about that. All right. So at the bottom of 170, what I have, what if they act as though they like me? And then just as I join them, they fly away laughing. So this is the duckling, ugly duckling, feeling insecure. He's just run upon a group who's made him nervous, anxious, excited. But at the same time, there's that fear of rejection because, he's lived from birth with this group of people who've rejected him from day one. And so while the group of white birds who flew over him didn't reject him, in fact, they called out to him and said, come on. But, he was scared. Fear got the best of him. But he glided down and landed on the pond, his heart beating hard. As soon as they saw him, the swans began to swim toward him. No doubt I am about to meet my end, thought the duckling. But if I am to be killed, then rather by these beautiful creatures than by hunters, farm wives, or long winters. So it's so interesting. He was so certain. And again, that's because he was living in this, he was raised in this fear mindset, and he was trapped in this survival mode. So he had no idea of, he didn't know what to think. All right. So on to 173, and what I've put down for 173, find a way to fulfill your soul's desires. We were not brought into this world to just exist or survive. We are meant to thrive. I feel like I've spent too many years as a survivor, and now I seek to thrive, and those are the people I'm drawn to. People who are ready to transition out of survival mode and find the solutions to their problems and create paths to make their biggest dreams come true. So I'm very much drawn to those people. So the passage I've identified at the bottom of 173 is, these expectations are defined very narrowly when one or both parents suffer from a desire for the angel child, the perfect conforming child. In the parent's fantasy, whatever child they have will be perfect and will reflect only the parent's ways and means. If the child is wildish, she may unfortunately be subjected to her parents' attempts at psychic surgery over and over again, for they are trying to remake the child, and more so trying to change what her soul requires of her. Though her soul requires seeing, the culture around her requires sightlessness. Though her soul wishes to speak its truth, she is pressured to be silent. Neither the child's soul nor her psyche can accommodate this. Pressure to be adequate in whatever manner authority defines it can chase away or underground or set her to wander for a long time looking for a place of nourishment and peace. This is pretty much how I was raised. So I was raised in a family of children are to be seen and not heard. And my maternal parent had 3 daughters. My father had too many children. Last I heard, it was a total of 19 children. So within my family, the 3 daughters, my middle sister was always acting up. And as a result, she was always getting disciplined physically. We all got disciplined verbally. Just the constant shouting, the constant berating. If you did something wrong, it could be breaking a plate. Who doesn't accidentally break a plate? But a person flying into a fit of rage over something like that, and they themselves may break a plate, but then find a way to blame it on you. Oh, you didn't wash this properly, so it slipped out of my hands. So living through hearing my sister get disciplined, that's hard to sit through. All right. So let's go on. One of the things that I put down after reading 173, I've spent so many years looking for nourishment in the wrong places. So for me, we have basic needs. Everybody knows, or not everybody, most of us have heard about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And so you need to feel secure, safe. You need to feel love. Well, some of our parents never learned how to love, or their idea of love doesn't match what love means to us. Love for me isn't you've paid the bills, made sure I have somewhere to live and food to eat. Love is holding me. Love is talking me through a problem. Love is listening to me and caring about my future. It's making plans with me, not for me. Love is obvious. It's kind. It's honest. It's true. It's not reminding me what it is about me that disturbs you. It's reminding me that despite whatever shortcoming I may have, that you see the thing about me that is amazing. That's what love is to me. So, as a result, as a teen, running around for someone to love me, I wasn't sure as a teen what love was. And so I got into relationships giving them what they said love was to them, but then still feeling depleted in the end. So, goodness, I did not expect that at all, but I want to be authentic in everything I do. So I let it happen. Another thing that I wrote down was I used to be obsessed with cereal with whole milk. I could eat an entire box in one sitting. I read Queen of Fuchsia's Sacred Woman. When I read Queen of Fuchsia's Sacred Woman, it was so interesting to me read that she said a grown-up who drinks milk is a person in need of nurturing. And that jabbed me, but I could see some truth in it, because if the times where I felt desperate and had to have a bowl of Captain Crunch cereal, those were times where emotionally I was hurting. And I would rather have had a hug, but there wasn't anyone around that I wanted to hug. And so then I would have this bowl of cereal, I guess as a feeling, standing, or whatever. So I thought that was interesting that she would say that grown-ups who consume milk are in need of nurturing. 183, the passage. The solutions to these bad choices are several-fold. If the woman were able to sit herself down and peer into her own heart, she would see there a need to have her talents, her gifts, her limitations respectfully acknowledged and accepted. So, to begin healing, Stop kidding yourself that a little feel good of the wrong sort will take care of a broken leg. Tell the truth about your wound, and then you will get a truthful picture of the remedy to apply to it. Don't pack whatever is easiest or most available into the emptiness. Hold out for the right medicine. You will recognize it because it makes your life stronger rather than weaker. It's so funny. Yeah, this goes back to me eating when I really just wanted the love of a human being who fully understood me. It also brings up the idea of how when you get in a relationship and you're just so happy to have a relationship, but then you realize, wait, no, it's not this person. And I think being strong enough to say, this is not working. This is not, it's not enough. It's not enough. I mean, of course, tell the person in hopes that they're willing to accommodate, because maybe it's something that they can accommodate. But if you tell them and change doesn't happen within a reasonable amount of time, realize that you're letting them, they're a placeholder, and you don't need a placeholder in your life. Don't waste your time with that. So we can see it in terms of people, we can see it in terms of drugs, we can see it in terms of food. We just need to really do the excavation to be honest with ourselves. All right, on to 185. When writers, for example, feel dry, they know that the way to become moist is to write. But if they're locked in ice, they won't write. There are painters who are grasping to paint, but they're telling themselves, get out of here. Your work is weirdly strange and ugly. There are many artists who've not yet gotten a good foothold or who are old war horses at developing their creative lives. And yet and still, every time they reach for the pen, the brush, the ribbons, the script, they hear, you are nothing but trouble. Your work is marginal or completely unacceptable because you yourself are marginal and unacceptable. So what is the solution? Do as the duckling does. Go ahead, struggle through it. Pick up the pen already and put it to the page and stop whining. Write. Pick up the brush and be mean to yourself for a change. Paint. Dancers, put on those loose chemise, tie the ribbons in your hair, at your waist, or on your ankles, and tell the body to take it from there. Dance. Actress, playwright, poet, musician, or any other. Generally, just stop talking. Don't say one more word unless you are a singer. Shut yourself in a room with a ceiling or in a clearing under the sky. Do your art. Generally, a thing cannot freeze if it is moving. So move, keep moving. 186. Exile as a boon. If you are attempted to fit whatever mode and fail to do so, you are probably lucky. You may be an exile of some sort, but you have sheltered your soul. There is an odd phenomenon that happens when one keeps trying to fit and fails. Even though the outcast is driven away, she is at the same time driven right into the arms of her psychic and true kin. Whether these be a course of study, an art form, or a group of people, it is worse to stay where one does not belong at all than to wander about lost for a while and looking for the psychic, soulful kinship one requires. It is never a mistake to search for what one requires. Never. So from this passage, it is worse to settle. It is worthwhile to your soul to keep searching for what it needs to feel fulfilled. It is disgraceful to your soul to stay in a situation or relationship that does not fulfill you, that you know is not what you need. So that's pretty powerful. 190. It is interesting to note that among wolves, no matter how sick, no matter how concerned, no matter how alone, afraid, or weakened, the wolf will continue. She will lop even with a broken leg. She will go near others seeking the protection of the pack. She will strenuously outwit, outrun, and outlast whatever is bedeviling her. She will put her all into taking breath after breath. She will drag herself, if necessary, just like the duckling, from place to place till she finds a good place, a healing place, a place for thriving. So don't stop until you find the place. I mean, yeah, you may stop for a few minutes. I see this as conversations. You know, before I had a car, I would be at a bus stop and someone would come along and we'd have this conversation. And you exchange numbers if your spirit is just ignited, right? Or sometimes you give a number because they ask. But you don't continue, or you shouldn't continue the conversations if your spirit has not confirmed this person. If your spirit does not see this person as a person who can help you to heal yourself, help you to thrive, move on. All right. That was 190. Love that. So I want to say that's the last thing that I've identified, basically that we want to move on from survivorship into thriving. So 197, but thriving means now that the bad times are behind, to put ourselves into occasions of the lush, the nutritive, the light, and there to flourish. To thrive with bushy, shaggy, heaving blossoms and leaves. It is better to name ourselves names that challenge us to grow as free creatures. That is thriving. That is what's meant for us. That is so interesting. I have to admit, I need more time with this one, I think because I've been in survival mode for so long, that's why I need more time with it. Because as she says, thriving means that the bad times are behind. My brain won't let me see that the bad times are behind me. But she goes on to say, it puts ourselves in occasions of lush. So if you're constantly putting yourself in these lush places, meaning these places of abundance, the nutritive, so places where you're being nurtured. So if you're a writer and you join some kind of writing group, and all these writers or artists are just constantly going, and it's exciting you, it's motivating you, it's fueling you. That makes sense, right? If you're thriving, you're going to put yourself amongst those type of people. And what does she go on to say? The light. You're not going to seek out darkness. You're going to seek out the light. And if you're doing all of this, obviously you're going to flourish. It's going to be just amazing. The things that you produce, the things that you say, it's going to be obvious when people see you. So it's coming to me now. It is better to name ourselves names that challenge us. That's funny to me. It's like a name that you want to walk into. Your parent may have named you a name that doesn't quite make sense to you. Well, now you're an adult. You can give yourself your own name.